This is a brief 9-slide tutorial on specifications and the design process to help you improve the specifications that you have for your group project. So as a starting point, you've seen this slide before. These are the key steps as you're going through the design process. And the thing to note is that writing the specification sits right in the middle. It sits before the time when you generate ideas and analyze them, and it comes from doing your research on customers, users, stakeholders, and technical information. So let's go through and understand what the problem is if you have the cart before the horse. What I mean by that, if you try to generate ideas without having a good specification. What happens then is you waste a lot of time because you're doing things without actually knowing what would be good and what would not be good. So one of the ways to understand that is this particular quote that I found in the Telegraph, which is a British newspaper, and from their engineering group. There's a myth that the Americans spent millions of dollars developing a pen that would work in space, and the Russians took a pencil. Whether it's true or not, good strategy and process should be the basis of any implementation. The point being, if you do things in the right order, it will take a lot less effort and you'll actually end up with a better practical solution, and that's what we want to learn to do because it'll make you a better engineer. So this ties in to the process that you're going through on the project, in the sense that you've just finished stage 2, where you did a first cut at developing your specifications. I've looked at your specifications, and in almost every single case, I can see a lot of room for improvement. So I want to help you improve those specifications, because if you do that, the ideas that you generate, the ideas that you end up picking will be far better, and you will be a far better designer. Okay, so let's talk about how do you develop good specifications. The process begins by identifying stakeholders. Typically, you're going to have between 4 and 8 stakeholders, and what you need to do for those stakeholders is identify their needs, which is typically going to be between 4 and 10 needs per stakeholder. How do you do that? You do that through the research that you do. Now that can be online research, it can be reading papers, depending upon what you're actually designing. It may be talking to stakeholders, it may be using all kinds of other resources as well, such as understanding what the alternatives are and therefore why different stakeholders might choose different alternatives or not choose them. What comes out of that list of stakeholder needs is that's how you develop the specifications. And here is a checklist of things that you should be doing to make sure that you end up with good specifications. And I have used this checklist in looking at what you submitted for your specifications for stage 2. First off, there was a requirement that you must have at least 6 specifications. It doesn't make sense unless those specifications are actually based on stakeholder needs. So if you have a specification and it wasn't written up in your stakeholder needs, something's wrong. It's also important that there is no major specification that is missing, because if you're missing something important, then it's not going to work. The solutions that best meet the specifications are not the solutions that would best meet the stakeholder needs. These specifications must be measurable. If they're not measurable, you won't be able to determine what a better or a worse idea is. And as an input, it is clearest if your specifications have some kind of a goal of what you're trying to achieve. If you identify a goal, it will help you make sure that your specification is measurable. So let's look at an example of specification development. And I'm going to use an example that I'm personally very familiar with, that I think all of you will be able to understand as well, and then has to deal with the bicycles that I design and build and sell. So in my case, the stakeholders fall into 5 main categories, of which one, which I've marked in red here, is the most important. Those stakeholders include people who go bike touring and want to fly with their bikes. It can include commuter cyclists. So these are people who would use a bike and then put it on the train or on a bus or something like that, or in the car. It includes bike dealers who would sell these products, media reviewers who create interest in those products, and suppliers who help make those products. So I've done a lot of research in this field. You're not going to have done as much research, but I want to give you an idea of where the most fruitful places were. One of the areas of research for me has been personal experience. The 2 that I've marked in red are ones that you can also use that I found very helpful in terms of the folding bicycles. And that is to understand what existing solutions look like, i.e. competitors or alternatives, and also to read blogs where people talk about these different products and which ones they like and why, etc. I've also done a lot by demonstrating my products, and I go to trade shows to do those demonstrations and also to see what others have done. So all of those pieces of research, as well as having a clear idea of who my stakeholders are that I consider to be most important, have allowed me to develop a list of stakeholder needs. For this category of bike tours, it is the 7 that I have listed here. They care about whether it meets the airline requirements for checked luggage, whether you can ride the bike over a long distance, so typically 50 to 100 miles per day with luggage, that it would work on any kind of road, both paved and dirt roads, that it has the right gearing to go up and down hills, that it is at an affordable price, that the weight is reasonable in comparison to other solutions, and that fundamentally this folding bike works as well as a non-folding bike. Commuters have slightly different needs. They ride it for short distances. They're concerned about being able to carry it on the bus or on the train or whatever, typically only ridden in paved roads. They're much more concerned about the fact that it folds fast. They're also concerned about cost and weight. Bike dealers have different requirements. They want products that are popular so that customers come in and ask for them. They want products that are easy to demonstrate so that customers can very easily see the value of it. They want the products to be profitable, i.e. low cost for them, and able to be sold at a good price so that they can make a profit. They want to have the products be easy for them to order and to get so that they don't have to wait a long time, and the product needs to be serviceable. The media is about news, so they want things that look cool and that are new. And suppliers care about things like, is it manufacturable? What does it cost to make it? And can they make it using their existing processes? I know I've gone through that list quickly, but I'm going to now take that same list and show you how it relates to specifications. You see how I've numbered everything on that list, and those numbers for the items that I've marked in red are the 6 specifications that I identified for folding bicycles as being the most important. So here is that list, the way that I have summarized it. So it includes packed size, which is whether it fits in an airline case or not, and you see that's the number 1 above. Whether it rides normally, and you can see that there's a number of number 2s that I've identified there in the bike tours column, that it can be ridden for a long distance, that it works on all roads, that it has the right gearing. And when you'll see what I'm going to do with the measures on that, I'm only going to concentrate on one, and I'm going to list some of the others in a slightly different place. The customers also care about the cost, they care about the weight of the bike, they care about the speed that it can be packed, and they care about what kinds of components are there, because this relates to gearing and things of this nature. They want it to work just like their bike that's a non-folding bike. So the most critical things then once you have that list, are to make sure that every single one of these is measurable. And you can see here what I've done in terms of generating measures for each of these. Rides normally is one of those tough ones to define a specific measure for, and so I'm using a surrogate, which is it needs to have the same diameter wheels as a normal bike, and that turns out to be a reasonable surrogate in this market. And you can see cost, weight are pretty easy, speed to pack, easy to measure as well, and components is another one that's more difficult. And there, the critical thing for my customers is that as many of the components that are on the bike frame are standard ones that can be used with any touring bike. So then I recommend you end up with goals for every single one of your specifications. It will help make sure that they are measurable. And here you can see that. Length plus width plus height needs to be less than 62 linear inches because that's the airline requirement for checked luggage. A large size typical standard bike has what's called a 700C wheel. Based on looking at my competitors, if I'm less than $2,000, my customers will be very happy. Based on competitive weights, the ideal is to be under 22 pounds, which is 10 kilograms, to pack at less than 5 minutes. If I was going after commuters, that would need to be less than 1 minute. But because these are not getting folded as frequently, 5 minutes is okay. And there's a number of components that I know my customers need, like a rear rack for their luggage, and they also prefer disc brakes. So that's what a good set of specifications would look like. Typically, you're going to write a little bit more. I've made this as brief as possible so that you get the big picture of what we're really trying to achieve here. Okay, so look at your specifications, and here's how I recommend that you improve them. First off, cost is almost always a specification. So make sure that you have at least one measure of cost in your list of specifications. That one's easy, it's pretty free to put it in if you don't have it, and it'll make your specifications better. For every specification that you have identified, try to identify a measurable goal. By talking about a goal, it will force you into coming out with how you can distinguish from one to the other. And speaking of distinguishing, think about your competitors or other alternatives or various alternatives for solving the problem. How are you going to distinguish them? That should help you create clear measures and goals. Remember, your specifications come from stakeholders and their needs. So go back and look at your stakeholder tables, work on your stakeholder needs table, and it will help you improve your specifications. And this is a hard task. So my recommendation, keep working on it multiple times, have different people in the group help work on it, and don't give up, because having a clear set of specifications is going to be very helpful as you generate and evaluate your idea. So here's that checklist again of the things that you must have in your specifications for them to be effective, and this is what I'm looking for. You must have at least 6 specifications. They must be based on stakeholder needs. There can be no major specification that is missing. Your specifications must be measurable, and I strongly recommend that you have a goal for every specification and you write that as well. So with that, I think you're ready. It's time to improve your specifications. If you have questions, feel free to ask me, ask any of the learning assistants, or ask Ellie. We're there to help you. This is going to be an iterative process for you, but it's going to be very important. Good luck, and I look forward to seeing your next stage of your reports.